Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So today's episode comes to you courtesy of Gilbert, who's been supporting this channel as a general tier patron. I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Gilbert, so again, Gilbert, thank you so much. And as for the topic on this Commander 2 Cents episode, Gilbert writes, how can you as a player help elevate the power level of your playgroup? I have been playing for 10 plus years and have always wanted to help my friends get better at EDH. Well, Gilbert, that is a fantastic question and one that a lot of Commander players have. To help with this, I've broken this episode down into multiple sections with different pieces of advice. So let's jump into things by talking about the first section that I'm calling Share Resources. Now, when it comes to certain games, you might want to keep your information to yourself. Maybe you play fantasy football and you've got a certain podcast that you listen to and you don't want your opponents in your league to, know that exact same information that you do. So by not sharing that information in that source, then you might have an advantage against your opponents. Now, obviously, the same can be true in Magic and Commander, but if you're trying to elevate the power level of your playgroup, you're going to want to share your sources. Giving your playgroup access to the same information that you have is definitely going to help them improve their game and improve their game on their own. For example, a newer player might not know about the incredibly powerful card search engine of Scryfall. This is an invaluable resource for a player, especially a player that might not know certain cards. Obviously, if you've been playing for a while, you know a good amount of the cards out there and you probably can pick and choose some out of your mind that just might work well with the deck. But even then, using Scryfall can help you discover cards that you've never even seen before or never considered for your deck. So yeah, if the rest of your playgroup isn't aware of Scryfall, make sure you share it with them. And if they don't know how it works, make sure you teach them. If someone in your playgroup is building a Rakdos deck built around death triggers, well, help them with a search and show them how it works. You can also help them learn how to sort and adjust budgets, etc., etc. Again, Scryfall is an incredible search engine that you can do a lot of things with. And it's a great way for players to discover cards that they never knew existed. Obviously, another fantastic resource to share with your playgroup if they aren't aware of it yet is EDH Rec. If they're interested in building a certain kind of deck, it can recommend which commanders might be good for that style of play. And once they select a commander or if they already have one in mind, the recommendations for cards to include can be a great place to start. Again, this can be another great resource for players to learn about cards that they either never knew existed or didn't consider for this kind of a strategy or commander. And while I don't recommend leaning on the percentages for EDH Rec too heavily because obviously there can be some discrepancies in there, it's still a good place to start, especially for newer players that might not feel as comfortable building an entire deck on their own. And obviously, another resource is actually a YouTube channel very much like the one that you're watching right now. If someone in your playgroup is looking to build a specific commander, send a deck tech over to them. Or if that commander is seen in a gameplay episode, send that to them too. There are a ton of fantastic Magic the Gathering YouTube channels out there that can be a great help. And if you're really looking to elevate your group's power level, maybe consider one that's more on the competitive side, like Casually Competitive. They might have a gameplay episode that showcases a commander that you know someone in your playgroup's interested in. They can learn the intricacies of that deck and potentially what cards to adjust in it. Or if you're looking for your playgroup to get even more competitive, maybe the Spike Feeders. They've got a ton of great episodes that can be a fantastic resource for players looking to elevate their game. But yeah, there are a ton of fantastic commander resources out there, so make sure that you're sharing them with your playgroup. But next up, let's move on to the next section, which I'm calling Small Improvements. While playing a game with your playgroup, one thing that you can look for are small areas of improvement. Now, you don't want to be condescending or overbearing, you just want to make a small suggestion on a way that a player might improve on a certain card. You're just trying to give that player a little bit of advice that might help improve their game. And sometimes it might be best to hold your advice until after the game is already finished. It can be something as small as maybe you noticing a potentially better card for that player's deck. For example, maybe one of the players in your playgroup is running a card like Cancel. It's an instant for 1 blue and it says counter target spell. Now, though there are many improved versions of this out there, this still sees play in 3% of all possible decks. So maybe just make a simple recommendation after the game to that player to maybe upgrade that card to something that could help them in a different way. And there are plenty of fantastic options that are right around that same cost that are essentially the exact same card plus a bit more. For example, some of the recommendations that you could have are Dissipate, Neutralize, or You Find the Villain's Lair. Each of these are all budget cards as well that do the exact same thing and have the exact same mana cost. They're all instants for 1 blue that say counter target spell, and yeah, that's exactly what Cancel does. But each of these just have a slight improvement that do just a little more on top of that. Dissipate's gonna counter target spell, and if that spell is countered this way, you exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So this can be really effective against certain decks that can recur cards or want cards in their graveyard, etc, etc. And then Neutralize could either counter target spell, or you could cycle it for 2. So giving this card that extra flexibility allows the player to get rid of it and ditch it for a different card if they need to. Whereas Cancel obviously doesn't have that flexibility. And speaking of flexibility, You Find the Villain's Lair is the newest version of Cancel, which is an instant that says choose one. You can counter target spell, or you can draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So if you need to counter a spell, great. If you don't need to counter a spell, just, loot. Having more options with a card is never going to be a bad thing. So maybe that player in your playgroup isn't aware of these other cards that are essentially Cancel Plus. And if you have some of these budget-friendly cards lying around, maybe just give that player some of these cards so they can improve their deck right there. Small improvements like these can make a big difference for a player that's looking to elevate their game. Or maybe you could talk about more cost-efficient counterspells with them like Negate. Negate is an instant for 1 and a blue, so it costs 1 less and it says counter-target non-creature spell. So yes, this one is specific to non-creature spells versus Cancel, which can counter any spell. But when bringing something like this up, you can get into the discussion about how most of the time non-creature spells are probably going to be the ones that you actually want to counter and need to counter in Commander. Now, obviously that depends on certain metas and certain playgroups, but still it's a discussion that you can have. Having that discussion and making that recommendation is definitely not going to hurt in elevating someone's game. And one more quick example of a card that still sees some play that you can make a recommendation when you see it is Manalith. It's a mana rock that costs 3 that taps to add 1 mana of any color. Again, like Cancel, there are just much better versions out there, essentially again, Manalith Plus. For example, you could bring up Mana Geode or Vessel of Endless Rest or Cultivator's Caravan. All of these cost the exact same amount and do the exact same thing, but there's a little extra thing that they do as well. Mana Geode has when it enters the battlefield, scry 1. And while that might not seem like a lot, little things like that do add up, and getting that extra scry can be very impactful. Vessel of Endless Rest says when it enters the battlefield, put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Again, this is a pretty small effect, but it can have a big impact, especially against a reanimation deck or a graveyard-centric deck. Or it could even help you get back one of your things if you have something in your graveyard that you need to get back in your library to get back later. And Cultivator's Caravan, again, is a 3-mana mana rock that can tap to add 1 mana of any color, but it's also a 5/5 vehicle with crew 3. So in a pinch, this can become a creature that can really help you out in a lot of situations. Or maybe you jump into the discussion with that Manalith player about more cost-effective mana rock options like Prismatic Lens and Sky Diamond. Each of these are mana rocks that also tap for 1 mana, but they cost 1 mana less to get out. Prismatic Lens can tap for a color, so you can pay 1 into it and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. And then Sky Diamond enters the battlefield tapped and it can tap for a blue. Now, yes, these can't tap for 1 mana of any color like Manalith can, but a lot of decks are going to want these rather than the more expensive mana rock. My personal recommendation is to focus on mana rocks that give you at least half the amount of mana that you put into them back. So mana rocks that cost 2 and tap for 1 meet that requirement, whereas Manalith does not. Again, just making these small and simple recommendations can lead to big improvements. So it can be a nice and easy way to help elevate your playgroup as you're playing. Another way outside of playing is going to be to discuss deck lists. Now, another resource that I probably should have brought up in that first section, but it felt more natural here, is actually sharing resources like deck building websites. There are many players out there that might not be aware of some fantastic deck building websites like Moxfield or Archidect, etc, etc. So because of that, some players might just be using, a notepad. They might just write down their deck lists, or they might use Excel and type it in there. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But by sharing a resource like a decklist website with your playgroup, then they can input their decks into a place that can easily be shared with all. These deck building websites make it easy to build a deck and also to digest a deck as well. What I mean by that is being able to, share it with someone else and then being able to see exactly what's going on in that deck and be able to give you recommendations from that. And being able to share and open about discussing deck lists can be a great way to elevate a playgroup. So share this resource and share your deck list and then make and ask for recommendations. By sharing your deck and having your playgroup look at it, the more eyes that you get on it, the more recommendations you're probably going to get. You can see a lot of different perspectives and maybe get a recommendation that you didn't expect. Maybe one player can recommend a specific card that would be perfect for this deck that no one else knew about. But I think one of the main ways that this can help is actually pretty simple. By working with a deck builder that lets you do custom sections, you can see if a player has enough cards of a certain type. For example, you might notice that a player doesn't have enough ramp cards in their deck, so they might fall behind other players. Or maybe they don't have enough card advantage spells in their deck, so they're going to falter at a certain point and run out of cards in their hand. Or maybe they're lacking in targeted removal or in board wipe, so when it comes to interacting with other players and actually, stopping them from doing their thing, they're going to fall short. Or maybe they don't have a way to protect their commander or some of their other key pieces, and yeah, they might fall short in that way too. Being able to look at a deck list before a player plays it or even purchases it can really help. Again, share with your playgroup, have a discussion, and take recommendations and make recommendations. But outside of sharing deck lists, another way to elevate your playgroup is to actually share decks. Maybe others in your playgroup haven't played with more powerful decks and don't want to commit to just buying one without knowing what they're doing. So feel free to share some of yours and explain, how your deck works. Maybe a good time to make this recommendation is as things are winding down and you might have time for just one more game, and maybe it's got to be a quick game. Obviously, this isn't always the case, but more powerful decks tend to have quicker games. Even from personal experience, this is kind of how me and some of the members of my playgroup kind of approach this. A little while back, I did an episode on the one deck I won't play anymore, which, okay, if that title was a bit longer, it would have been the one deck I won't play anymore except in very specific times. It's a Joyride Weatherlight Captain deck that is Artifact Storm, and it's incredibly powerful, yes, even on a small budget. But if everyone signs on to play their overpowered deck, yeah, that can be a great way to get a quick game in before the night ends. So I'll play my powerful Joyride deck, Eddie will play his powerful Rashmi deck, and Alec will play his powerful Animar deck, and we'll have a quick game. And again, if the rest of your playgroup don't have any powerful decks, share yours. Maybe they've never played a game of Commander at that level or played a deck like that, and getting one of these powerful decks into their hands can get them excited about this type of gameplay. So, while my recommendation isn't try to take over, just your entire night of Commander and be like, everyone needs to play my decks, it might be a good idea to, again, wait until, the last game of the night when you don't have much time and say, hey, if we want to get a quick game in, this might be a good way to do it. Whereas a more casual game might take 45 minutes or an hour or even more, a really quick competitive game can take, 30 or less minutes. But I think the most important thing about elevating your playgroup's power level might be my last section that I'm going to talk about, which is going to be about playing often. Make a habit about getting together with your playgroup and playing consistently. Commander is a fantastic way to socialize with your friends, and obviously the more you play Commander, the better you're going to get at it. So maybe just talk with your playgroup and say, hey, what's everyone's schedule on Tuesdays? How does Tuesday night look for everyone? Maybe we can just put this down as Commander night for us. Or maybe you want to select your Commander night based on your favorite shop in the area that everyone can meet up at. Or you can find a new shop by going onto Wizard Store and Event Locator to find a store that's going to have a Commander night near you. And maybe you and other members of your playgroup can meet other players there that can help elevate the overall power level of your playgroup as well. I know I've met a lot of fantastic players at one of my favorite LGSs, Lodestone. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot from playing with others that I would otherwise not have met if I hadn't gone to an LGS. So check out some LGSs on your area and maybe look at their calendars to see what other nights they might have Commander as well. And even if you don't have enough players in your playgroup that are available on that night, take whoever wants to go and then, go explore and meet new people too. Again, the more that your playgroup plays, the more that your play is going to be elevated. You might see new kinds of decks or new kinds of cards that you've never seen before at an LGS, so yeah, just get out there and play. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.